Go ahead and get started. Good evening, everybody. My name is Nicole Cernas. I'm going to be your co-host for tonight. Before we get into it, I want to turn it over to your RVP, Joel Ortiz, to say a few words before we begin.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for jumping on. Appreciate everybody getting on the call. Just before we kick off, just wanted to talk about a couple things about why, personally, I support Nick and Jamal for the current positions of president and executive vice president. First and foremost, it's what we're doing right here, right now, in particular. Getting on a call, getting in front of the membership, answering the questions, going into facilities. It's real easy to campaign and run a campaign from a basement, run a campaign from a closet, run a campaign on 2-minute videos. Meanwhile, not getting out in front of the members to ask them how things are going in their facilities, ask them how things are going into the field, asking them what the decisions that happen nationally, how they impact the facilities in particular, is really important. Sometimes when you don't get into facilities, you can lose touch with the membership. When we do the monthly update and we show the pictures of facility visits, it's not because we like pictures. It's to let the membership know that every month we are going into facilities, because interacting with the members is fundamentally the most important thing that you can do as a leader to understand what is actually happening in the field and what the members are actually looking for and what the actual members actually want and what their working conditions are like on a day-to-day basis. And Nick and Jamal doing that as often as they've done on the campaign trail. I know they've done over 130 facility visits, and that's actually the toughest thing to do. Get in front of the members to actually understand what it is that they want to, what it is that isn't going well, what may be going well, but oftentimes it's what's not going well. And not putting yourself in a position to listen to the members and hear what it is that they want and what direction they want to go. Is how an organization can lose touch really quick. So Nick and Jamal, I appreciate you getting on the call. I appreciate you speaking to the Western Pacific region, and we're turning it back over to you all, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joel. And thank all of you for being here tonight. Before we get started, I want to let Nick and Jamal introduce themselves, just say a little bit about who they are. We'll start with Nick first.
Appreciate it, Nicole, Joel, entire Western Pacific region. Joel, it's been an honor to serve with you the last 2.5 years, and to have your support is invaluable. To have your region's support is been one of those things that when you walk into a facility, you could tell what, the tone, the tempo of a facility. And when we walk into Western Pacific, facilities, we know we're with family. We know we're, walking into education and members that are motivated to move our union forward. So a huge shout out to everybody out in Western Pacific in the movement that you're doing, because it doesn't matter what coast you're on, what region you're from, we're all facing issues. And we'll talk a lot about those tonight. But specifically, just so you have some background about me, who I am, again, Nick Daniels, I'm the Southwest Regional Vice President. Currently, I started my air traffic control career in the United States Marine Corps from 1998 to 2003. Served over mainly in Camp Pendleton the entire time, and ended up getting injured. I was planning on retiring from the Marine Corps. Ended up with 7 screws in my spine later in life because of it, before going over to Iraq. And that led me to the FAA. I was hired in 2003 and said, please put me anywhere besides Texas, because I was from Texas. And I got to stay out in California in the Marine Corps. And I was hoping to be somewhere out there on the on a coast again. And they put me in Addison Tower in Dallas, Texas. But life has its own way. And I was happy to be there working at Addison Tower as a level 7 VFR tower, and transferred to Fort Worth Center in 2005, where I really started to understand. I got to see what union was, or hear about the ideas of union when I was at Addison Tower. But the presence of an 11-member facility, union was only as big as it could be at that time there, and really has shown how much or how important it is to invest in our facilities that are level 9 and below, of understanding what union is, because that was my first experience to it. And now here I am running for president. At Fort Worth Center, I had the opportunity to run just as the White Book was, going into effect for area representative. I was encouraged by many of our senior members. I said, this is going to be your fight, your career. This was 2006 going into 07. I was the area representative. Then I was the secretary, vice president, 6 years as a FAC rep, alternate regional vice president for 3 years, and now sit as the regional vice president of the Southwest region. So it's an honor to be here. One other thing personal about me is I have an 18-year-old son that I'm extremely proud of, who is out, working on getting his journey in becoming a pilot. So completely encourage that growth and aspect of it, but also keeps it very relevant of what the economics look like from that side of it, and what the job potentials of it look like as well. And then I have a 6-year-old daughter who's a kindergartner, Skylie, and she is the one that keeps me narrow focused and dad always on task. She has been an amazing blessing to my life, and definitely makes me push myself even more to stay up with her. So that's a little bit about me. Turn it over to you, Jamal.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Daniels-Haltom. Obviously excited to be with the Western Pacific home region. I started my career at Las Vegas TradeCon, went to Tamiami Tower, and then Las Vegas Tower. Been at Las Vegas Tower since 2010. Obviously, you all know it's a highly complex operation that many of the best of us work at. I'm very proud of that. I started my air traffic career in the Air Force back in 1999. Stayed there in 2005, worked at a couple of contract towers. NACA career, FAC rep at Las Vegas Tower from 2012 to 2019. Unofficially in 2011, that was a fun year also. I was ARVP in our region for a little while prior to becoming the national training rep. I had a great privilege of serving on lots of committees, done some 114 duties. National training rep's been an absolute honor, expanding. Spent a lot of time in LR, was on the contract team in 2016. And at one point, that was the highlight of my career. I'm a person that believes in being where your feet are. My feet are in the training rep position, and I absolutely love it. Inspired by you all. I hope that I inspire you in some way. And, this is a passion of mine, being a labor union member and hopefully a leader seen by you all and hopefully voted on by you all. So with no more, I do have a 20-year-old daughter, so I understand the economy very well. Also, she spends the majority of my money, so I am without any. So that's fine by me, though, because it's filled with love for the job that I do. So back over to you, Nicole, so we can get started.
Excellent. So we are going to get into a Q&A portion of this here in just a minute. But before we do that, I want to give Nick and Jamal the opportunity to discuss their perspectives on some of what our NACA members, their most important topics are that we've come across so far. So Nick, I don't know if you want to start that.
Absolutely. I'm sure through your questions, we'll answer many of the hot topics that are out there. But as Joel said, one of the things that Jamal and I wanted to make sure of when running for these positions was September 1st of 2024 isn't when we walk in and start trying to figure it out of what's happening out there. This is the extremely important part of being in tune with the membership, being out, finding ways to know what not only the topics are, how we're going to address them, and what are the ideas from our amazing members out in the field. It's not Jamal and I elect us, we'll have all the smart ideas. It's how do we collectively figure that out together? And that's one of the main reasons that we wanted to run together. Our styles, the way that we complement one another, and also the ways that we challenge each other. Leadership in this union, or leadership in general, is not just an individual accomplishment. It is a team sport. It is something that you have to constantly work on. You push each other towards, and I'm honored to stand next to Jamal every single time that we speak, every single question that we answer, even when we agree or we disagree. It's with each other, with the membership. The beauty of it is we're trying to find ways to improve and become better. How do we take this chess piece and move it forward? And when we set that chess piece up, we know somebody else will be able to take it even further later on. Those are some of just the fundamental aspects of when two people say we will have similar ideas and vision, styles that complement each other. This isn't some world where we're trying to pull the wool over your eyes and you have two people like Mick and Rich who are obviously running together, who are obviously trying to get the other, person elected. You have two people saying, we are challenging our membership. Elect both of us because we know that we'll be able to push this union together as an actual team. And leadership starts with setting an example. And that's the example that we want to set with each and every one of you. Now, as far as pay, contract, extensions, everything else like that, we'll see where we go in the questions and conversation. And if some of that doesn't come up organically through question, we'll make sure we address that from there. We really want to give a lot of that time to you. And I want to make sure Jamal has a opportunity to kick us off in this aspect as well. So over to you, brother.
Yeah, Nick just said to push the union, and I agree that will be part of our job, but also the job is to take the push from the members of the union. Tell us what the direction of our union is. Let us make sure that we're all educated. Let's make sure that education doesn't come only when we need something from you, but that we're constantly feeding our membership. One of the things that we constantly get asked is, how do we bring the union back after such a fractured time? The truth is, we wish it wasn't fracturing. Elections are part of unions. It gives the membership an opportunity to show their voice. We launched our campaign at the convention amongst friends and family, and we were excited about that. And at that time, we spoke about ourselves. We were positive. We continue to be positive. We want to inspire and empower. That's sometimes mocked, but it means something. It means we know that the union can only be as strong as its membership. Empowering those people to do something that makes us all better, finding a purpose for each one of us as individuals. So how do we bring us back together after such a fractured time? Is we do as little as we can to add to the fracture, but we make sure that we understand that every member is important. Those who don't vote for us, we'll never know. It's not a quest of ours. I've ran and won FAC Rep 4 times. Sometimes I had an opponent. That opponent typically participated in the union going forward. I don't believe in, and I know Nick doesn't either, in having a list of people to remove or anything like that. In fact, our Constitution doesn't allow for that anyway. We believe in building and not tearing down. So, it'll give us an opportunity to show right out of the gate that what we say is what we do. We will bring this union back together, but we can start right now. You all can be part of that process by telling those people that you might think are supporters of other candidates, you're a union member. That's perfectly fine. We certainly don't shun anybody for anything such as that. So collectively, we'll keep our union together. We'll be stronger, and we'll give those who've only been in a short time a real feel of what it's like to be a part of a powerful NACA.
Excellent. Thank you guys both for that. Now we're going to get into the Q&A part of this, right? This is why we're here. This is, the most important piece. We want to hear from you guys. We want to hear your questions. A few housekeeping items first. Nothing is off the table. No questions are off the table. We call ourselves a NACA family for a reason, and sometimes families have to have difficult conversations. So anything that you guys want to go over, everything, just feel free. Nothing is off the table. Second, nothing here is going to be moderated. We're asking that you post your questions either in the chat. You can use the chat feature down at the bottom. You have to hit the 3 little dots down there. Your meeting chat should pop up. You can post your questions there if you like, or you can raise your hand. I'll be able to unmute you, and you'll be able to ask your question that way. If you are going to raise your hand, we do ask if you're comfortable enough to go ahead and turn on your camera so we can see you. It's always good to speak to people face to face, even though we are over Zoom. But if you're not comfortable with that, that's extremely, it's okay. I am going to ask that you don't private message any questions. One, we are trying to be transparent with this, and two, that goes back to the piece that none of this is moderated. We're not going to cherry pick easy questions to ask Nick and Jamal, and we're not going to hide anything. So with that, if anybody wants to get us started with the questions, go ahead and raise your hands. If not, you guys can start typing in the chat. And also one other thing with that, even if you don't have any questions, if you have ideas or, concerns or topics, anything that you want to discuss or just let Nick and Jamal know, we definitely encourage you to also speak up about that because, it's not just them here to answer your questions. They are also here to learn from you guys. So anything that you guys want to say, please feel free to start.
And we're most certainly not looking for softballs. Ask the questions that are asked of you in the break rooms, on your message boards, no matter what it is. It could be personal. Hopefully it's about our profession, but personal questions do matter. People that ask to be in these positions open themselves up to the scrutiny, and we should be able to stand in front of the light and be looked at. So we're here, and we want to leave no stone unturned. So please feel free to ask any question.
Well, while we're giving people the opportunity to raise a hand, again, we encourage it. Even if you don't know exactly how you want to articulate it or anything else like that. The beauty of that we've got the feedback over the last two town halls that we've done is, man, this seemed like the first time in a long time I actually got to just have a conversation about my union, and it wasn't some pre-delivered, preset answers or anything else like that. That's what we're here for, Western Pacific, is let's have any conversation you want. We need to help lead with it, we will, but we'd rather hit it up and anything that you all want to talk about.
Right. Looks like we have Brad first with his hand up. Brad, I'm going, you put it down. You change your mind. I'm going to unmute you, Brad.
Oh, all good, Nicole. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, hear you just fine.
Okay. Hey, I don't have a question as much as I just wanted to tell the group why I support Nick and Jamal so much and kind of give a little backstory. We're literally on a cruise ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean right now, and we got on the Wi-Fi and made sure we were on here because I wanted to tell the group a little bit of the background on why I support them so strongly, because a lot of people in my facility and other folks I deal with always ask, like, why you feel so strongly about them. So those of you that don't know, I'm Brad Welko. I'm on the National Safety Committee as our pilot controller liaison. I met Jamal I don't remember Jamal, it's probably been 15, 16 years ago when I was at Chicago Center. And we did right from the start. And Jamal was the guy that interviewed me. And immediately with me and him, I was like, this guy really gets it. Like, he made me feel like NACA cares. There's somebody out there that has my back. So that's why I met Jamal and Nick. Once I got into this position, I met Nick through the pilot controller outreach, and Nick was the guy that I could text, and Nick would call me back right away. And for an RVP, with how much work those guys and girls do and how busy they are, Nick never ever shied away from responding to me right away or saying, "Hey, Brad, I'll call you back in 10 minutes. Let me know what you need." So I just wanted to throw that out there for the whole group and just say why I appreciate these guys and why I fully support them and will do anything to get this school elected. I love them both, so I appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Brad. The work that you do on behalf of our union is truly appreciated, and thank you for being a huge momentum builder in this campaign as well. Can't thank you enough, brother.
Same. Appreciate you, Brad.
All right. So Jason and Miguel, I see your hands up. We did have a question in the chat first from Zach Collard. It says, with the current situation with the administrator, does this make you guys more willing to open up negotiations on the slate book or less willing?
Do we kick that one off, Jamal?
Sure.
So let's start off with just negotiations in general before diving into our current world of an administrator imposing fatigue mitigations upon us. Well, I absolutely want to negotiate a contract in 2026. Hard stop, end of story. The thing that we are going to have discussions about, and I'm sure the education will come through the region and over the course of the night in conversations like this, is what do we do if there are executive orders in place when we attempt to negotiate that could strip our rights for decades to be? I think if there are, that's not making us want to negotiate more, because we already want to negotiate in 2026, or even sooner if we can get there in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Obviously, that's a point in time which either party could open that contract. So no executive orders in place, we'll be going to a full-term negotiation. If we had executive orders in place, I think this is where this question plays perfectly. Imagine this. We have executive orders in place. We attempt to open a contract and have rights stripped away from us, mainly through executive order of not being able to negotiate permissive subjects of bargaining, which are at the agency's election, which is your schedule and your annual leave. If that was the case right now, we had lost that ability because of opening a contract. Those laws took effect. The administrator's actual imposition would have not, we would not be protected or insulated from that right now. It's because we have a contract in place. It's because we have the ability to negotiate schedules that's actually saving us in the current form. So losing our rights could have drastically changed what this fatigue mitigation looked like. So overall, our goal will be, how do we protect our rights? How do we make sure that we negotiate? And at the end of all of that is, do we need to change strategies if there are executive orders in place? Because we're not going to just extend this contract out forever. We negotiate through MOU or some other form or method instead of just a full-term bargain. But I know there's a lot of different rabbit holes or nuances that could go down. I'll turn it over to you, brother.
Yeah, I would, to directly answer the question regarding the administrator is, the administrator's been in place since October of 23, so not very long. If any of you are local reps, FAC reps, we have RVPs on the call. One of the things we're taught and one of the things we teach at rep training is you have to engage and fully invest in the relationship with your collaborative partner. And we say you have to train those managers, show them what the virtues of collaboration are. So we would absolutely lean into that with the administrator. Not only the administrator, the COO, the Department of Transportation, Buttigieg, we would lean into all of those positions and show them that NACA's back at the table and ready to play ball. They want to deal with NACA. NACA is currently led by a president that is not doing his job very well. He's not running headfirst into those relationships and establishing them. He should have had the upper hand on this administrator because he's been around longer. He should have been able to usher that relationship and make sure that we were all protected. We're not afraid of establishing those relationships. We have credibility built in our present roles and past roles that we've been in. So we complement each other well. We'll be there. We'll be with the administrator, the deputy administrator. We'll establish relationships all throughout the FAA, and we'll make sure that NACA members' rights are protected and we're not imposed on. You got to remember, this is a Democratic administration. For them to impose means that they must have thought they don't have a collaborative partner. That's something that you have to take into account. People will tell you what they'll do for you in 2026 or tell you that we want to kick something until 2029. Ask them why they haven't done anything right now. You have opportunities to do the job. If we were in those seats, we'd be doing the job. And when we get in those seats, we'll most certainly do the job. We're trying to lay the groundwork now.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to go to Jason. He has his hand raised. Jason, I just unmuted you, so feel free to ask your question.
How you doing, everyone? Hey, Nick. Hey, Jamal. Let's have a quick question. So watching these videos that Rich and Mick put out, just from Mick, they sound very condescending and sarcastic. I know with the good briefings that Joel's been giving us in the region and talking with Jamal as well, have you guys had an opportunity to talk to people in their region, and what are they saying when you put out that info? Because it just sounds like a lot of that info with the repercussions with the upcoming elections, and like you said, Nick, about the EOs that could possibly destroy us, if you will. What are you hearing from people in their region? Because I feel that they're not getting the entire story. So that's kind of like my question, because that stuff, living through the white book, like some of us had, a lot of us that have, a lot of us members that haven't, it just kind of worries me for our career and going from now and going forward.
Yeah, well, thanks, Jason. Love you, by the way, brother. Good dude,
yeah,
for sure. For anyone who doesn't know him. Awesome guy. So I would tell you that Nick and I recently, myself, Nick, John Bratcher, we had the opportunity to teach rep training in the New England region, which was interesting because where duty calls, we go and we deliver. We didn't shy away from it. We were able to make connections up there, and there are plenty of members up there that understand. There's plenty of members that have worked with and under Mick, if you will, and know his style. They know that he campaigned in a very similar manner when he ran for RVP there. But to be very succinct as it relates to the messaging getting there, the New England region, the Central region, Great Lakes, and Eastern region, they don't even invite me as the national training rep to come to their regional meetings. The Central region just had one. It's always been customary to make sure that our members have all the education that they can get so that they can, and our reps so that they can serve the members properly. They've cut that out. They cut out correspondence about the NTI that I send out weekly. They cut out Nick from the CRWG numbers and people knowing that he participated in that. So a long way of saying they are trying to limit information and provide disinformation. They are using a clickbait manner, as Joel kicked it off. They're trying to run the campaign from their basements. They're trying to use condescending videos and frightening videos to scare our junior members who've been led poorly by them into thinking that this is what NACA is. But collectively, we'll get it done with your help and the help of all the people on this call and the people that you're going to reach out to and connect with. And we'll turn it around, and we won't in the future have any information silos, because we as leaders will get out amongst our people and talk to them.
Yeah, despite popular belief, if you watch those, Jamal and I have a name. It's Nick Daniels and Daniels-Haltom, not opponent, because we were usually referred to as the opponent for quite some time. Now we are referred to as NDJH or whatever they want to do. As Jamal said, and I won't, just reiterate exactly what he said. Let's just be clear. Their idea, Rich and Mick, is to deceive, divide, and ultimately just stay focused on attacking somebody else. And that makes them look good. Because if Jamal and Nick get attacked all the time, man, that means I'm out here doing a great job and we're not getting attacked. It's a campaign tactic that's disgusting, that needs to be eradicated from our union. And I'm tired of seeing, for the 2.5 years that have been on this national executive board, nothing but division, and our president saying it's everybody else's fault. That has to stop. The president is who is accountable to each and every one of these members, the executive vice president as well, of setting that tone and tempo. And that's something that you will exactly see from us, as Jamal was just saying there. So do I think the members up there are educated? I absolutely do. I don't think that it's so siloed as the walls of a region don't allow things to break free. But as Jamal said, when we start having people that go out, executive boards that go out and speak in unison, that's something that hasn't happened in 2.5 years. We haven't hardly done but maybe 1 or 2 joint messages the entire time we've been on there. Under Jamal and I's direction, would be working with our national board, executive board, after a meeting saying, hey, these are the 3 things that we need to go educate our members on. Let's make sure that they have all the information. We go out and put out a similar message. And in that way, we know the message is resonating no matter who's elected in their regions. And that will be incumbent upon Jamal and I as well to make sure that that occurs and that message uniformly spreads across the country. So that is where you will actually see the change when we're elected.
Awesome. Appreciate it, guys.
And great to see you, Jason. Thank you, brother.
Okay, Miguel, you were up next, so I'm going to unmute you now.
Hey guys, how you doing?
What's up, Miguel?
Question for you guys. Hear this a lot of RT1, CFS, convention, NCEPT. What is your thoughts on NCEPT, the inability to move and being somewhat stuck at a facility, and how would you guys improve the process of moving to different facilities, or would you keep it?
One of the things that Jamal and I speak about regularly is once you get your foot in the door, right? And if anybody's been a representative or you've done some level of negotiation, you don't find a way to walk out of that door and then just say, we're done with it because we don't like it. You could keep the cover of a book and change the words in the middle, and it becomes an entirely new book, but you wouldn't know it by looking at the cover. I think that's something that we need to do with NCEPT as well. It works well in a place that has, or in a system that has, is well staffed, is what I was trying to say there. And this is no slam to anyone that's of our NCEP reps. Nicole is one for the Southern region. They work their ass off to try to find ways to put this square peg in a round hole. I think what we have to do is start looking at the idea of movement in not just 3/4 chunks, right? Or 85% being the new 100%. So I'll give you a couple of the ideas that we would like to work on with the team. Obviously, none of these things we can wave a magic wand and they go into place because we got elected. We have to negotiate these things, but we got to break free of the thinking of, well, if we just keep doing this for another 8 years, eventually it'll work when we have more staffing. Absolutely not. In the interim, we need to start looking at number one, targeted moves, where in our level 4 through 7 facilities, especially, we got people that are trying to go from a level 5 to a level 6 that will never even see that facility come up on a list because they'll never climb high enough. And that's their spot that somebody else is going to fill from the academy. Well, why aren't we backfilling behind the academy for them, moving them over to the 6, and then they go get to spend their life where they actually wanted to be. And you start clearing some of those moves off the board that way. The other thing that we want to start working on is what we call a model for retention and throughput, where we could get away from 85% as a 100%. It's a fancier way of saying staff are level 8s and 9s, or hell, our level 9s and belows at 125%. But of course, the agency wouldn't just sign off on that. So you come up with a method and reason for it is we need to stabilize staffing in a facility, but still give you enough bodies where we're not playing the Hunger Games when one person's going to be able to be released, where 2 or 3 people will have the ability to rotate through because we have enough trainees at that facility that when CPCs, actually occur, they will be able to move out more ready, not wait 2 more years to get another body, and then we get to try it all over again. And that's especially in our up downs where they're not turning out bodies the same as everyone else. And the last part that I'll hit on that one and turn over to Jamal is the distribution of trainees to facilities themselves. One of the things that we have to look at and be able to show you is how does a VFR tower that turns out a CPC every 4 months, they could get one body, but they're percentage based. So they immediately fall down when a body leaves by 10 to 11%, while a level 7 facility that's an up down that takes 2 years to train in gets the same one body if their percentage falls down, and doesn't get another body for 2 years because they have this training in the system for that long for their percentages to turn over again. So that distribution of looking, how do we give 3 bodies to that level 7 up down to the 1 body going to that tower so we can all turn over at a similar or faster rate overall. So those are a few of the ideas. I know we have plenty more from there, but Jamal, over to you, brother.
Yeah, thanks, Miguel. I mean, a big part of it is tying everything together, tying together training, tying together staffing, all vehicles of employee movement, academy, previous experience, new hires, swaps, hardships, speaking to each other and staying out of the silos. Again, you have a Nest, an NCEP rep, the same person, Mick Devine. How are those things going right now? Not so great for anybody. So without going down that rabbit hole and sticking to your question is, looking at it from the 30,000 foot view and also asking those that are in the field, what are the issues and how don't they see avenues for movement? Inversing the NCEP sometimes, starting with our 8s and 9s as opposed to always keeping the LAXs and O'Hares at the top of the list so that we have those people that want to move from, say a North Las Vegas to Midway Tower. They actually have the opportunity to do that without knowing that they have to bid O'Hare to get to Chicago. Being versatile, being fluid, actually having leaders at the table, people who don't look. The NCEP rules are essentially adjusted at each and every NCEP to meet the needs. We can't continuously have the agency come with all of the ideas. And as Nick said, Nicole and Travis and I forget it from Nebraska. What's his name?
Daniel.
Daniel Witt and so many of these, Jake Dutwell. We know these guys have great ideas. They need great leadership. getting whipped at the table, leaving 13 people off the NCEP when they should have been moved, and having RVPs and our chief of staff having to engage in those things only hurts the brand of the NCEP. So as Nick said, we want to keep the cover on it and always be adjusting what's inside to meet the needs of our people. Staffing and training are vitally important to that end, and having people do things to try to hurt our training aspects or our training process is completely not going to help us get the movement that we need. Looks like Joel has his hand up, so perhaps we recognize him.
Joel, I just unmuted you.
Thank you. I was going to go backwards and speak to the executive order component because that was a previous comment, question, statement, and just give a little bit of a historical context as it related to the executive orders. So if you go back to 2020, the executive orders, 2020, 2021, the previous administration, the executive orders in fact occurred. They were in fact in place. They were in fact a real thing. So them being in place in 2021, the election happened in 2022, and they went away. In 2021, it was the charge of that president, Paul Rinaldi, that all the RVPs were going to go out in preparation of a contract that was set to expire in 2022 and inform the membership of the executive orders that were in place, the impacts to the organization, and the impacts they were going to have to the collective bargaining agreement. Because under those executive orders, permissive subjects of bargaining are non-negotiable. I'll just speak to one piece of 3 executive orders. So we even talk about 2 of them, just one piece of one. Permissive subjects of bargaining being non-negotiable. It was real. Our CBA currently has 125 articles. With permissive subjects of bargaining being non-negotiable at the table, 77 articles before you sit down to negotiate are off the table. Meaning we're working with 48 articles just to start. If you go back to 1989, our very first contract had 73 articles. So we're going back to below ground zero. I don't know what's happened now, but we are in literally the same situation in 2024 that we were in 2020. We have a CBA that's due to expire, a presidential election, and with this presidential election, we have 2 candidates that have both been president, and we've got to experience both of them. We know what both have provided, and we know what both will do. So to sit there for campaign purposes for any side to believe that the executive orders care who the NACA president is, they don't care. Immaterial who the president of NACA is, those executive orders, if the Trump administration wins, will in fact exist and will in fact impact this workforce and will in fact make permissive subjects of bargaining non-negotiable. Any town hall you've been on that suggests that AFG kicked ass during those executive orders, they sued their way to victory, or the members didn't ratify the contract and they won, that is not true. It in fact did not happen. For those of you that were on this call that experienced the white book, did it matter whether or not we ratify that white book? It doesn't matter at all. Just like it's not going to matter, the executive orders are in place, whether we ratify them or not, they are going to exist. So I just wanted to clarify that the executive orders are not a punchline. They are a threat, and they're a threat to this organization, and it would be negligent and irresponsible for any leader to not acknowledge that and take that into consideration with anything they do.
Yeah. And Joel, appreciate that, because that's what's happening before you is right now you have Mick and Rich who are trying to be predatory on persons that haven't experienced those or haven't been educated. And our president has failed. He said, oh, it'd be a good idea, I guess, go out there and maybe educate on it. They were the ones that came and educated us last time around, Mick and Rich, about these executive orders and saying how horrible they'll be. But they know that's not popular because they don't have a way to really explain it, and they don't connect well with the members when they talk about that. So now it's just easier to say buzzwords like, oh, we'll find a way to fight it. Let's go team. And I won't repeat what Joel just said from there of why it's happening. But it's a campaign strategy simply to prey on the misinformed and to keep you misinformed.
All right. So we're going to go, Mark and Chris, I see your hands up, but we're going to go back to the chat. Stuart Merrill, I guess a little bit of a build up to this question. So I'm going to read it all here. Team NDJH, as you gentlemen know, I work at Palo Alto Tower, a level 6 tower in the San Francisco Bay Area. Despite having the highest locality and CIP around, it does not do justice to the cost of living in this area. Palo Alto is often passed over solely on the basis of cost of living as a pick from the academy. I know adjusting locality is picking winners or losers, and I certainly do not want to take money away from another brother or sister. Do you have any ideas about how pay might be increased in localities like the Bay Area, where the cost of living vastly exceeds the benefits currently afforded by locality and CIP pay?
Yeah, sure. How you doing, Stuart? We did visit Palo Alto Tower because to us, all the facilities are equal and of equal importance. So it was interesting. The shortest runway I think I've ever seen. You can't even have same runway separation on it. It was very interesting. Look, the work that you do is important and valuable. A couple things in there just want to make clear is that we can't negotiate locality pay because that's not set by the FAA. We can, through our legislative influences, try to get those that have the ability to make that adjustment to actually see it. Some of your brothers in the Bay Area up in at Oakland Center, for instance, they don't even get to realize their entire locality because they bump up against the cap. Letting people know those type of things. The municipality that you serve, as close as you are to Stanford, getting things into and commerce moving in that area is important to the NAS. So using all of our levers and pulling on all of those levers to increase pay is something that's important to us. Looking at things like Saturday premium pays, taking the opportunity to see, can we just have a general controller incentive pay rather than having CIP that only goes out to those that it goes out to. And while that might seem crazy, prior to the Green Book, there was a 4% pay for controllers that maintain currency, right? So having things like that, maybe revisiting those to adjust, we are bound by the cap. Currently, we get a January and June raise. The premiums and differentials and things such as that can be moved through MOU without even going to a contract table. I think that there is an understanding of what we are and what we mean to the country and the national airspace system. It's having the right people at the right time to capitalize on that. And Stuart, you guys in all facilities such as yours are front of mind. Joel never lets a meeting go by where it's not stated of Maui, the Bay Area, Los Angeles, Las Vegas now. It's expensive everywhere. It's not lost on us, and we'll fight to ensure that everyone is compensated appropriately.
Yeah, and as Jamal said, that's the negotiation aspect of it, right? There's so many different avenues that we have to approach it, but this is a real issue that we will face for quite some time, especially with where the economics have driven over the last few years. We have people that have been hired in the last 5. For somebody like me who's been around since 2003, I've seen, let's just take even the raises from 2009 to now, my pay's gone up substantially. I stayed ahead of inflation because of the raises compounding over so long. Right now, you have people that are absolutely behind, student debt, and it's coming into facilities on AG pay and being there at the whim of management, whether they gave you a binder this week to get started in training, whether the sim is up at the hub and spoke place down, that you have to travel to that day to get kicked up and actually get your first D1 or D2 or D3 raise, whatever is appropriate at your facility. That's something we immediately want to change, is going in and say, when you show up at your facility, you're going to show up at the first developmental stage of training that you should be. There's no reason. That doesn't even change our wages. You're going to hit that step anyways, unless for some reason you're not successful. And maneuvering that is a huge benefit for our members right out of the gate. The other part of it is legislatively. We're going to have to look as a union to be legislatively nimble in how do we articulate us being bound to, take ZLA, right? Where it's currently located, we will forever be bound there until, I would say something catastrophic happens where the agency is going to start moving facilities all around the country. But because we're bound there at Palo Alto, or we're bound there out at ZLA, Oakland, or any place like that, we have to start looking at how do we increase our buying power? How do we increase leveraging that we're government employees and finding legislation that can help us with loans, legislation that can help us purchase homes, and also with our commutes. You got a place out there looking at Santa Barbara and Camarillo in areas like that, saying most people are able to start doing their jobs from home. We will never be able to do our job from home, at least in our lifetime. So how do we use, again, the legislative process to say we need this level of compensation or these additional or additional benefits and pays in order to do an hour-and-a-half commute to be in an area that's affordable to live. All these things don't just happen on going to the agency alone. We have to find ways to involve Congress and change those as well.
I would like to add one last thing to this. In the history of this union and its predecessor, the most substantial gains in pay and compensation have come as a result of legislation. The contract negotiations complement that. They go hand in hand, but we have to be legislatively active. And when we have a PAC that has dwindled because our president either doesn't believe in it or doesn't know how to convey it to its members, we were well on our way to a $10 million PAC, and we're lucky if we're still getting 8.5 million. While that seems like nothing, we have constituents and localities that are very important to you all that NACA hasn't built that legislative relationship with in years, because we haven't been procuring or we haven't been cultivating those relationships to ensure that the NACA majority is there for us. It does take money in this system in order to influence. We're not buying anything. What we're doing is getting ourselves access and making sure that NACA's needs are understood. You have to go out. You have to go to solidarity meetings. You have to be willing to inspire your members to give. I give the max I can to the PAC, and I have well before I was a national representative, but it's because I believed that I wanted the future of our union to be strong. When you have a president that's afraid to go out and mention that, or is very tepid in that process, it hurts us all, and we won't be that way.
So staying in that same vein, we do have a question in the chat from Adam F. He says that he's hearing you guys want to extend the slate book instead of going back to the bargaining table. Specifically feels that 1.6% yearly raise is not enough because of inflation, and he would like to know what your take on pay and the yearly contract raises.
Yeah.
You want me to take the first part, Jamal, or you?
Go ahead.
Okay. The first part just about the extension itself, right? There is no current extension. What our president came to us and did is created a narrative because he's scared to talk about extending a contract, and said, I have to go out there and I have to answer the administrator who is willing to extend our contract currently. And what we were very definitive in saying is, we do not want to extend a contract unless we have the ability to negotiate in 2026. That is something that clearly didn't happen from the last extension. Is nobody set a line, nobody said and indicated that they wanted to negotiate before 2026. And our president has missed the opportunity in 2021, 2022, 2023. And now here we are with a gun to our head and looking at, are there executive orders or not? So it's not a matter of Jamal and I just want to extend, not even close. We're looking for every opportunity to get to the table. What we have to do is be smart and strategic. And as Joel perfectly articulated, that not let our rights get stripped away from us by being blind and saying, oh, well, we'll go get everything we want if we just negotiate. It doesn't matter about executive orders. Those things are real. We just have to be smart about how we maneuver them. Protect the box. What's better win-win than don't get your rights stripped away from you than executive orders? If they're not there, you still have the ability to negotiate. And if the executive orders are in place, we figure out other ways of legislatively removing the executive orders or negotiating via an MOU instead of a full-term negotiation. All of these things are options, and no way are we saying just extend the contract and it'll make it easy. We want to improve on the contract that we have.
What's become very interesting here is their words are making you believe about us that the actions that they took were our actions. We didn't extend the contract. I wasn't on the National Executive Board in 2021. Nick wasn't on the Executive Board in 2021. We've never said that we want to extend the collective bargaining agreement. You can look at any video that we have. You can look at any correspondence that we have. We continuously say, at the first available time to negotiate a CBA, we'd like to do it. I've already been part of it. I believe wholeheartedly in what this union has to offer, what air traffic controllers and all of our air navigation safety providers have to offer. And we look forward to that opportunity. But we have to always be diligent and be honest as it relates to everyone. Now, answering your question about the 1.6, 1.6 compounds on the January raise. The 1.6 raise that comes in June, the first full pay period in June, is actually a longevity way. It's the way we move through the bands. Our contract has what's called regardless of position and band in it. So in January, fortunately for us, which the agency would love to have back, it's interesting that people think when we negotiate pay, the only way to go up is up. When you negotiate pay, you negotiate pay. The agency usually offers us going backwards. They always do. So the January raise is supposed to keep us up with the cost of living. For the most part, it has. It's struggled recently. We acknowledge that, very clear on that. The June raise is to move you through the bands. And I'll just finish this with, regardless of position and band, previous to this collective bargaining agreement, it was never codified in a collective bargaining agreement that when we get those raises in January, they lift the band. The new top of the band becomes that monetary amount. So if it goes up 5%, the bands go up by 5%. We didn't have that before. So we have that. We have the June raise, the two combined, they compound on each other, and then we move to the next year. So do we think that can increase? Absolutely. It's time for it to be looked at. 1.6 served its time. Let's ask for more. We've done more. We can ask for more.
And then add on top of that, not just break it free of 1.6 has to be 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, whatever, again, that, you know, somebody's going to look at and attempt to negotiate. Obviously, we're going to go and maximize that. But it's breaking free of the very mindset that that's the only way to get a longevity raise as well. The ideas that we would like to bring are negotiate a longevity bonus of time at a facility. You're either stuck at a facility, or many of you got to the facility you actually want to be at. If you're a CPC there for 5 years, why aren't you compensated or given some level of a lump sum, a 1% of your base pay for being there for 5 years CPC? At 10 years, then you get compensated at 2% of your base pay or an X amount of dollars. These things will help put retain people. It would also help recruit people to their facilities. And we can't just keep with the old legacy concepts of, you know, just change this, you know, one thing that we've always had into more. It's not only start there, but find other ways to do it as well.
Right. So Mark, we're going to go to you now. You have your hand raised. I'm unmuting you now.
Hey, how's it going? First one's, I guess, maybe more of an idea. It goes back to the NCEPT. During the convention, I think it was kind of maybe mishandled, misjudged. The issue brought up of level, what was it, 9s and belows having more of an opportunity to move if they've been at a facility for, say, 10 plus years, or the 15 plus years that they have, 10 through 12. 10 through 12, if you're there 15 years, you're almost a shoo-in to go to whatever facility you want. People who have stayed at facilities at level 8s, 5s, 6s for 10, 15 years, they're even the 10 years, I mean, from what I've heard, is it's more of it's a note on there, but they're not really looking at that as a priority placement in the NCEPT. So maybe that would be something to be looked at to get the lower level movements around. I mean, 10 years at a facility is quite a long time. I think you put your time in and maybe eligible to move on would be a nice thing. The second one, it's going to be maybe a little tougher, but elections always bring out the ugly in people. And I've seen a lot of bashing and slashing on the other side. And I'd just like to ask you guys, what do you think Mick and maybe Santa do well, and something maybe that you would carry forward that you guys have had discussions about in the and we are a union, so we should all be, unionized. And I know they've probably done some good things, but what things would you maybe move forward with what they have suggested or they are doing?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Really quick touch on the first one. The reason that the convention floor was the wrong place to do that was because it binds a negotiating position. But we should absolutely pursue all avenues to account for people serving at a facility for a modicum of time that represents that it would be awesome for them to be able to move on. So don't think that because at the convention floor we didn't enter that into our constitution that can't be pursued. So, and then what do they do well? I'll speak to Mick, right? Because he calls me his opponent. I think he makes entertaining videos. So if he desires to be in a video making capacity for the union, perhaps he could do that. I'm not the only person that's capable of anything, but Mick has had opportunities on NCEP, Nest, Abacus, and as a RVP, and I've not been impressed with the work. He is a dues-paying member, will remain a dues-paying member, I would imagine. I don't have a disdain for him, but I have not seen anything that I would want to model myself after or any of his attributes that I think serve this union well, to be completely frank with you.
Yeah, I'll take the other aspect of it. For Rich, I think he has a level of technicality, right? When you see a clock, you try to figure out how a clock works. I think he's, does well at figuring out, okay, maybe what piece of this clock doesn't work. What that doesn't do is provide leadership opportunities and engage people to want to figure out about clocks as well and want to figure out how to fix those very things. So, I mean, a technical expertise, every person that steps up for this union, I don't care what your name is, you should be appreciated. You should be, thanked. You should be, put in a regard of we're volunteers. That's what this union's about. But the problem is, over the last 2.5 years, what's occurred is anybody who's stepping up and volunteers under Rich has been a world of, well, we're going to shit on that person and going to find a way to talk internally more about, who's doing something or who is, an issue or a problem to make ourselves look better. And we'll prop ourselves up as a national executive board or as a group that we're the all-knowing, we're the ones, but we'll go out and thank the membership for what they do. Listen, we need every type of leader. We need every type of person that's willing to step up and help this union. But right now, we need somebody who's going to engage this union, who's going to bring stop the division and actually unify us. And that's going to come through education and leaders who are wanting to be out there. That's not their style. That's not what they possess, but I absolutely appreciate the work and the passion they've poured into it.
Thank you. Yeah. I've heard a lot of me from that side, but it is the union. It's not a me thing. So I appreciate the answers.
Oh, great question, brother.
All right, Chris Adams, I'm going to unmute you now. So you're up. Uh-oh. Hold on, you muted again. There you go.
You got me? Yeah, how y'all doing tonight? I'll go back to the NCEP again. One of the big things at my facility is we send people out. We get a lot of trainees. We're level 7 and we're in Southern California. So, a lot of people want to come to the area. The biggest issue with us is we send our people as soon as we can get them out to the same 3 places. So we send them over and over to these places so we get to move. And our issue is a lot of those newer, younger people, it's great for them. They get to go exactly where they want, but the middle is hard. So, for example, I had a swap in for 7 years. We finally stopped trying because the guy that I wanted to swap with, he just became a supervisor to come to Burbank. So we ended up with a situation where neither one of us had to move. Neither one of us we could have done it in one pay period, did the swap. Nobody had to move. No one had to change anything. According to the contract, we would have been able to do it at the snap of a finger. But because we included swaps into NCEP, it's impossible to get done. So is there any talk, and I talked to Mick about this a few different times, about having the movement of NCEP separate and going back to the swaps going matched to what the contract says and removing it from that the aspect of the full NCEP?
You mind if I ask real quick, Chris, what facility you were up to?
I was trying to go back to Ontario.
Ontario. Okay.
Yeah, so for me it would have been 7 to 5. For him, it would have been 5 to 7.
Okay. I think that's a perfect example of something that I do not want us to ever shy away from, is finding ways to move somebody. Jamal and I spoke about it many times. First of all, if you're in a level 7 and below where academy grads are going to be placed, the ability to move there should be happening, because tomorrow somebody graduates that we put behind Chris, so Chris could go to the level 7 where an academy person is going to be placed, and it's in the story. You go there, and the other person came from the level 5 to the level 7 because they too could easily be placed in, and that's called a targeted move system, right? Jamal was in the Air Force. I was in the Marine Corps. When I was going to be stationed in another facility or in a different duty location, they had somebody coming to replace me, and then I was sent to another duty location. Like, there's no reason we don't introduce that concept right there to help clear out many of those moves that you're talking about, Chris. But the idea of swaps overall, there's 2 of them that Jamal and I have talked about that we would be very interested in negotiating. Now, everything has a rabbit hole, right? And every controller will shoot a hole in something. So they're preliminary in nature, but they're ideas that we think should be explored. One is for facilities that are low staffed, there should be a percentage level based on our current staffing to say, if I want to move from a higher staff facility to a lower staff facility and vice versa. Well, if let's say we're 81% staff and 79% staff, take the person, have somebody moving in, remove them from the 81% when we're able or when we can reach. Because if an entire facility is in a 6-day work week, that's something that we have to consider. But taking them out and sending them to the lower level facility to help over there, and then let them achieve a level of certification, and then taking the person, once, let's say I get in a tower through local before I have to do any local assist or finish up my CPC. Once I achieve local, the other person that I was going to swap with is on a 6-month release to the facility that they wanted to go to. So that way you're backfilling behind the lower staff facilities first. And then the other ones I think that's pretty easy is light type facilities. Take en route, for example. If you're going to go from an en route facility to an en route facility, it's not going to be a 2.5-year training cycle. It's like 4 to 6 months in most occasions. Why we don't swap those and let those persons move? Again, take the person from the higher staff facility out first, send them over. Once they get their first 2 R sides, let them move back. Those are absolutely things that will get us moving down the road in the right direction. So, Jamal, I don't know if I missed any that we normally talk about, but I know those are the few that we've talked about several times.
No, it makes complete sense, and I hope it answered Chris's question. Is, again, it takes ingenuity, the right people at the table, the willingness to have the conversations, and to make it make sense to an agency that is usually just looking to be pushed in the right direction. So thanks, Chris, for the concept, and just know that we've already considered it and have ideas around it.
This is good. So we're going to go back to the chat. Stuart Merrill had another question. He says, do you have any ideas for how the union could be better connected, for every member to be in the information loop, to be able to share ideas or concerns and otherwise know they are being heard?
Yeah, well, lots of ideas. First and foremost is get out and engage them, right? We've been to 130 facilities and you can't stay there all week, but it sure goes a long way to say that the national president and national executive vice president have been in my building. I learned a lot from Paul and Trish by their visits, going out, having that messaging, being willing to use our social medias and be our own social medias, learning how people need to be interacted with today is different than it was even when I came into the agency. Not being an introvert, being an extrovert, being willing to have a TikTok presence, being willing to have a Twitter presence, being willing to have the Facebook presence, reach everybody where they are, but also having coherent messaging for the RVPs so we're all saying the same thing, or we agree what our message is going to be and put it out at the same time. This is a perfect example, something as important as executive orders. We're not going out and telling people the absolute truth about everything that they potentially face. So, Stuart, those would be ways, but also listening to the ideas of the membership and finding out how they want to be communicated to. We send out a lot of emails that don't get read. We got to do better than that.
And it's incumbent upon a president and executive vice president to set those expectations, right, of the regional vice presidents and working with your national executive board. If one of the things that a leader or leaders should do is saying, okay, I want to know, hey, Joel, by the next NEB meeting, we figure out what are our bottom 5 facilities that are struggling with training? What are our lowest 5 staff facilities right now? What are our main obstacles? And what is the agency saying or keeping us from being able to move that forward? That gives Joel a reason to go, not that he wouldn't in his region anyways. I know how engaged Joel stays in his region, but going out and then bringing back information. And then the president, executive vice president, going out with the regional vice presidents to find out that information and not just be on a dog and pony tour, but to actually know what's happening in our facilities. You have to go seeking the issues, not wait to see who screams the loudest and finds out where the fire is. And that's how I've seen the last 2.5 years of this NEB run, is you go out, if somebody yells loud enough, we'll be able to focus on them. And then we try to start figuring out what the issue is from there. Why are we not the ones out helping the ARVPs, the RVPs, the leaders on the committees, what the issues are, and then clearing the obstacles and assisting in clearing the obstacles so they can be out making true change in your facilities? And that'll come from looking at what are the responsibilities of our RVPs. Right now, they're tasked with overseeing every committee. Like a committee somehow can't speak to an NEB. They have chairs that could talk to us. Instead, we have RVP liaisons in every single one of them. That may make sense for some of them, but it doesn't make sense to take away our RVPs from the field where we need them out there engaging on the regular. So that would be a change that we would be bringing in as well, on top of everything else Jamal said.
All right, next we're going to go to Johnny. I'm going to unmute you now. You're good to go.
Hello, Nick, Jamal. You guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Got a couple questions for you guys, but I'll just give you my first question, and then if someone else has a question, to give them an opportunity. First question is just to hear from each one of you what you think are probably your top, 3 or 5 goals that you think our union needs to improve on, in the future if you get elected, and what you guys' just main focus on, what you would like to see to improve on.
For the interest of time, Johnny, would you be willing to accept 2 from both of us?
Yeah, whatever you guys got.
Oh, we have plenty, right? A main goal for me is to instill union and instill togetherness in our membership, because it gives us an opportunity to be more effective. The stronger we are, the more effective we are, and the better off we are as a union. Being fractured does indeed hurt us, but I want to be clear that having an election is not what's fracturing. It's the behaviors in an election. And then another passion is education, continuing to educate the membership. An educated and informed membership is a strong membership. They're not easily dissuaded. Having our membership manipulated in the way it's been recently, where it feels like we're part of the American lexicon of division, when we could stand above that and be different. Like, let that be in your real political life. Your union political life should be about making the union stronger. And that is something that I'm adamantly about, is education and togetherness.
I'll add in there, it'll kind of tie into what Stuart was asking earlier as well. In the world of any organization, especially one of this size, the number one thing that you should never stop working on is communication. In the worlds of community building, you have right now things such as Discord, a social, community building to be able to share information easier than ever, yet somehow we're less informed and more disconnected than we've ever been. That is, as Jamal mentioned it earlier, we have to go find what works for our members. Having them go to anonymous point65.com and Reddit and sources like that, that should be great for going out and figuring out how to fix your TV or your washer and dryer. It should not be the source of information for this union. And that is something that we have absolutely missed on for the last 2.5 years, and that we need to capitalize on now. Is we could share out information, we can make sure that it's there, and then it's our job to follow up and move the ball forward. The other aspect of it is bringing back a sense of purpose to this union. Right now, I think so many of our members are usually one issue away from quitting. They go out to their facility and say, if I don't get this thing, if 1.6 doesn't change to 2.0 or 2.5, what am I doing here? I'm out. That is something that it comes from the top and leadership, and being able to explain how we're going to press and use our rights, how important it is for you to not show and us collectively to not show fracturing and division, because when we do, it's the main thing that the agency attacks us with is when we are divided. That is so easy for them to then sneak in and break it apart even more by just planting something like an imposition of work rules and fatigue mitigation. Those things of not being one issue away from quitting comes from a sense of purpose of what is my union about and what is my purpose inside that union? How do I as a member get to contribute? And it's not everybody has to roll up their sleeves and at all times answer their phones and questions and the amazing work of so many of our leaders and fact reps do for each and every one of you is go to work and do your best on phraseology that day, and provide operational excellence. We'll be able to capitalize on it this way, and here's how our union will use that in moving forward. So I think all of those things combine up into ultimately leaders setting the example as well. And when we have leaders that set the example, I think most of our members realize, okay, this is something that I want to be a part of. I want to see and not just be a part of it, but if I have a purpose, I know I'm going to go take that hill. We don't know what's on top of that hill. We think we know what's there. And when we'll get there, we'll find out, but we're going to find out together. That's what a union should be about.
Okay. If I have time for the next question, I didn't know if someone else might have something else. I didn't want to interrupt anyone else.
No, go ahead.
But I appreciate the response, and Jamal, I 100% agree with you that our leaders need to engage our membership with new technology, whether that be Twitter, whatever it may be, to keep our membership engaged. Our generation is changing of controllers, and we need to be able to continue to do that. So it's good that you guys are looking at doing that. Tough questions for you guys each. Nick, this is for you. It was a post was put out from Rich, an email when it comes to spending accusations and whatever he had said, but I just want to give you the opportunity to address that. I want to 100% occur. I have a pretty big budget at my facility, and I've done everything I can to engage my members, take them out. And I think the people that work hard, there's an opportunity to play hard. I agree 100%. I'm okay with that. But if, become our president, what do you think, giving you the opportunity to answer about our budget and how will we assess our budget with inflation and, things are starting to cost a little bit more? What would be your plan for that?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what he said. I get accused of a lot by Rich, mainly because they try to pin anything, and it doesn't matter whether it's truth or not a lot of times right now. But when it specifically comes to spending, there's one region in the totality of this NEB who's had asked and requested the least amount of money since I became on the board. So annually we go through a fiscal scrub, right, of how much money your region is going to need to operate. From year 1 to year 2, the Southwestern region asked for $0 more. Zero. Everyone else got a request. Everyone got a portion of that request and moved from there. And then over the last year, we only moved, I think, another 2,500. Could be in the upwards of 5,000. That's over a 3-year span. The Southwest region only increased their budget that much. But it's because John Bratcher and I knew we're in a position where things are tight. Things are tough. We just need to figure out where we need to push our money and where we need to spend it to. The accusations of bar tabs and something like that, first of all, If we're somehow going to say that one bar tab of $800 is, breaking our entire union, I think we're completely focusing in the wrong direction. If our members don't want a single dollar spent on a bar tab for somebody who's giving up usually time away from their family, does nothing but answer text questions or texts and emails all day, take calls at 1 o'clock in the morning, and they don't want them to buy them a drink. Okay. The union that I grew up in, it was usually where we do our most work is sitting down, having one drink, not talking about being crazy and buying $1,000 bottles of wine or something like that. We're going to have, a Johnny Walker Black and talk about the craziness that we're seeing, what's going on, how we're going to move this union forward together. Like those are moments of camaraderie. Those are moments of growing. And I promise you, I've learned more at a dinner table with the leaders of this union than I ever have sitting just in a room, staring at each other, looking at, some MOU. Those things are extremely important of learning about that MOU, but it's really the lessons that have come of how did we fight to get there? What did that look like and how do we move it forward? So ultimately, we're charged with running a budget. We'll continue to find ways to spend our money smartly. But if somebody thinks that electing me means that all of a sudden all the money goes to nothing but parties, you're mistakenly wrong. It will go to making sure that we do exactly what you mentioned in your first question and take this union to new heights and new levels. It's not going to be about bar tabs and spending. I think that's just rhetoric to hopefully reelect Rich again, who claims to be a fiscal hawk. Yet when we passed the budget, he turned around and broke the budget with hiring somebody that we tried to get him to put in the budget for an deputy IT director, but he didn't want to do it because it was going to look bad in the budget from there. That's actually just covering things up. If you look at business line 10, it was the highest thing over because of bonuses, pay, and things like that, which is the president's budget. So everything else is just to distract from that.
I 100% concur with you, everything you said, that our members are people that are doing the work, that go to these events. We work hard, we play hard. So I have no issues that anything that you guys have done at RVPs. Jamal, my next question is for you for an opportunity to address something that Mick has put on a video. First of all, I thought the contract team for the Slate book did a fantastic job. I wasn't hired in the white book. I was in the red book. But I got to hear from all my fellow controllers coming out of the white book, and everyone was pretty appreciative when we had a red book. And then coming out of that red book, getting the Slate book and getting a 1.6 or 7, whatever the raise is. We were pretty ecstatic about it. No one knew what the inflation was going to be like. No one knew what our economy was going to be like. But to now hear our members upset and pissed off when we came from the red book to the Slate book and everyone was ecstatic. So I just want to give you an opportunity. He had mentioned that you were given an opportunity and now that you failed. I thought the contract team at the time did a great job for a Slate book. So just want to give you an opportunity to address your thoughts, on that opinion and what was said.
Yeah, thanks, Johnny. Well, the Slate book, I can tell you that the members of the Slate book team backed and doing the work of this union. We poured our heart and soul into it. We did, as I spoke, and I don't know if you were here earlier, Johnny, we codified regardless of position and band, which allows us to move the bands every year. The 1.6 was added on to it. The revisionist history, again, of people that extended a collective bargaining agreement. I see this thing recently that, accusations are usually a confession. I've never said the Slate book is the greatest contract. I've never said that. That's what they said. The Slate book served its membership well. It was extended in 2021 by the executive board that currently exists, rightfully, in my opinion. And the predecessor to the Slate book, if negotiated under favorable or fair terms, will be better than that. That's what we do. That's what this union's always done. We'll always move the ball forward. And I do thank you, Johnny, for at least allowing me to address this. Anyone who thinks that anyone would be better off on the GS scale and anyone that's willing to sell that to an air traffic controller is somebody that you should be very leery of. The GS scale lags behind the AT pay scale by about $30,000 at the top. At the bottom ends of it, it stops after 18 years. It takes them 18 years to go from a GS 10 step 1 to a GS 10 step 10, which is the end. It takes 18 years because of the way they do it, and they miss opportunities to compound. We get raises every single year. We compound every single year. So he couldn't be further from the truth, but it's par for the course. When you don't have anything to talk about, why not talk about my failures? When you don't have anything to celebrate on your behalf or make up failures. I think this union knows that slate book served them well. And I hope they know that Nick and I don't want the slate book to be the forever contract. I look forward to being part of, hopefully, another contract, a legacy contract for controllers that haven't even been hired yet. That's the type of person I am.
I 100% agree with you. And pardon everybody on this call. I just got my last question. It's my biggest concern. I think you guys have done a great job. I would never want to travel as much as you guys have. Gone out to all the facilities, seen what you guys have done on Facebook, trying to reach out and reach out to the membership. It is my biggest concern. I'll just say it. I don't know who's on from the East Coast and who's on here from the West and the Midwest. Generally, what I have seen in our union in the East Coast pretty much is known for predominantly being a strong union. And the West Coast people, what I would say is more like people sitting on the coast chilling by the beach. They're not usually very active members. And my concern is, the East Coast with those guys and what they're saying and what's being told to the membership. Their membership gets really fired up really quick. They're more likely to engage and vote. What is your guys' thoughts? I think you guys are doing a good job of trying to get the membership out, but my concern is just our people, mainly on the West Pacific side. I can't speak on the Midwest. Getting them out to actually vote, to see what you guys are saying, and to vote the right people in office.
Well, Johnny, first, bro, thanks, but I don't want to divide the union. I think that's what they're trying to do. Eastern region brothers, Southern, Alaskan, all of the 10 regions are NACA brothers and sisters. They need to hear a message, and then they get an opportunity to make a choice. I'll tell you this. When I was at the 2018 vote count, the Western Pacific was the reason Paul Rinaldi was elected. The Western Pacific turned out in dramatic fashion to show that Joel Ortiz was the right person for that region, for our region. So the strength is there. The power is in your hands. I grew up on the East Coast. You guys used to accuse me of being Eastern region. So I'm a Western Pacific guy through and through. But my brothers and sisters in this union, the regional lines are just to divide the work. It no way implies power. It no way implies ability. And if those guys are trying to live on Paul and Phil and Dean's and Barry's and the legacy of those before them, Rick Pitino said, Larry Bird's not walking through that door. These ain't the same people that those were. These are people that exist right now that have done very little for the union. I had a guy ask yesterday, why does the union feel so miserable? Take into account who's in the leadership positions now. And if it's feeling miserable, it certainly didn't feel miserable for me for the majority of my career. I'd ask people to look and see, do they know why that is? So, Nick, sorry about going so long there, bro.
No, you crushed it. I agree with everything he said.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Johnny. Okay, we're going to go to the chat really quick because we have Brandon from P50. He is at the facility and he has some members in the room with him right now. Hopefully they're still there. If not, I told him that we could follow up. However, he wants to make sure that they get their answers. But he says, I'm here in the facility with a few members. Can you explain, presumably again, if there is a desire to extend the CBA with the Trump administration? I guess more so, why not just move forward with opening the CBA and negotiate pay or any form of higher wages, even with the risk of a Trump administration?
I think one of the things that we have to, Joel mentioned it earlier, is seeing we don't have just one path forward, and that's a term negotiation. The idea of extending a contract is only there in order to protect this union right now. If we are to go in, there's executive orders in place, as Joel said, and just one small component of that is to do and remove our ability to negotiate permissive subjects of bargaining. You've eliminated 70% of your contract, 75% of your contract. just out the go. Why would we not protect that and find ways to either still negotiate pay? Because if the agency was going to be willing to negotiate pay in a term agreement, it doesn't mean it can't be done in a midterm agreement via an MOU when you don't have a loss of all of those rights. And you don't spend the next 20 years saying, well, we got a raise from 1.6 to 2.0. Oh, by the way, we don't have schedules. We don't have annual leave. The agency gets to implement anything that they want, and our lives are truly miserable, but we got, a little bit more money because of it. How about we do both? How about we protect this union, find ways to remove those executive orders, or negotiate via midterm bargaining instead of a term bargaining overall? So we just have to change our mindset to realizing those aren't the only opportunities to move and advance our pay forward. Hell, in a contract extension in previous years, the Red Book, we negotiated a pay raise when we did the extension. We were able to negotiate the 1.6 in. That is actually where it came from. So all of these concepts are before us. What we can't do is decide we're just going to lather ourselves up. We're going to be scared of a friendly administration who is currently imposing upon our current president, not including him in the process. But when it's a anti-federal, anti-employee, administration, those are the ones we'll really go fight. We'll lose all our rights, potentially lose our rights, even no matter what chair you try to put on top of that. We'll just be spending the next 10 years figuring out how to get back to where we are today, and then still maybe moving our pay forward, all at a hope and a gleam. Jamal, I don't know if there's anything you want to add from there.
Yeah, I would first, to our NACA brothers and sisters there at P50, thanks for joining. Listen, it's not the administration. We don't care what administration is in place. It's a matter of if the executive orders are in place. With fair rules in place, 100% confident in our ability to increase all things, because we have a story to tell. We provide to the GDP in a fashion that should be accounted for and rewarded properly, compensated appropriately. But if those executive orders are in place, if they're showing you that they're that anti-government, what makes you think that they have a treasure trove of money to handle? They've said government employees are overpaid. We are government employees. They said they want to eliminate the bloat. They want to be able to fire you without a grievance process. Why would they just arbitrarily increase the pay beyond our wildest imaginations, right? We do have the ability to negotiate pay. Title 49 provisions exist, and hopefully Brandon can explain that. Pay is a mandatory subject of bargaining. So what's likely to happen in that type of scenario with an anti-government government employee administration is they're going to propose lower pay. We're going to propose higher pay. And if the Title 49 provisions still exist and we have mediation to finality followed by arbitration, the arbitrator is either going to kick the can, wait for the time to run out, because remember, this cannot happen until 2026. They're going to either kick the can and let time run out and we get nothing. We stay status quo. Potentially we lose. But in order to do that, we'd have to give away all of those things that Nick talked about. Schedules, position descriptions, dress code, annual leave. All of those things are on the table, and it's not to scare you. It's silly to say it's to scare you. If it were only to scare you, why in 2021 did the same people extend the CBA when they had the option to not? Why did they write statements to say that it was a great extension and we should go further? You are being manipulated. We get paid the same way you get paid. When the union gets a pay increase, when union members get pay increases. I got a 50-50 shot of going back to being air traffic controller. I want the pay to increase. Trust me, I do. But I do not want to decimate ourselves in the process. All I know is air traffic control. That's it. I want to move air traffic control pay up like everyone else does. We cannot run into slaughter just because people think that it shows strength. So this is not a conversation that you can have in this short a period of time. We will be at P50. We'll come out. We'll spend all the time it takes. We'll have an EO presentation. But the last thing I want to say, we're not afraid to negotiate. We're skillful negotiators. You just have to be strategic.
Excellent. Okay, we're going to move over to Kitchen K. So I'm going to unmute you now. Please tell us who you are so we know who we're talking to.
Sorry, I'm Michelle Kitchen. I'm at Prescott Tower in Arizona. So I don't have a question. I just wanted to say, for the first time in 13 years, I'm really proud of the union. Like, sorry, I had a really crap time my first few years in the FAA. And just watching you guys on Facebook, you're visiting facilities, it means a lot to someone like me. I was on the East Coast. It was like I came in when Paul was president, and he was like somewhat of a celebrity status to me. I didn't really know who he was or what he did. It wasn't until I went to my second facility and got more involved in the union after something bad happened at that facility. So coming out here to the West Side, I'm not saying West is better than East or anything like that. I just want y'all to know that I see you interacting with my Facebook, and I got to hang out with Jamal a few weeks ago down in Phoenix, and Joel. That was, to me, it's very nice, and I appreciate it. And I like that you guys are going to like all the facilities and stuff like that. It means a lot to me because I've been in the union for like 13 years now. So this is the first time I've really like had fun watching this kind of stuff. I always felt like an outsider until now. So I just want to let you guys know I appreciate that. I really appreciate your outreach to people, and you're more obtainable to someone like me, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to say that before I get going to karaoke tonight. Nick, I'm gonna sing a song for you.
Well, Michelle, first of all, I can feel the passion when you speak, and to be a part of that is a thing that has been missing, and you're absolutely right, and it has to be brought back, because when our membership feels connected, the mountains that we move together are amazing. So thank you for bringing and just continuously reminding us and our membership how important it is that we spend this time working together and finding ways to connect, not ways to divide. Because right now we have presidents who want to divide.
It means a lot, you know?
Exactly. We have somebody who is wanting to divide by crapping on our own members instead of promoting and finding ways to prop us all up. So thank you for that, and truly appreciate the passion. What a great moment.
Thanks.
All right. Michelle, I'm going to go back to mute you and tell my girl Ariel I said hello. I saw her on here earlier. Okay, we're going to go to the chat from Chris Rosati. Says, can you explain how our union's overall financial situation actually is? Why does Rich seem to be saying that we are low on funds? If we are low on funds, why would we start a whole new conference talking about ATX without holding some sort of vote at convention or cutting costs elsewhere? ATX seems to be a good idea, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I would say the union takes in the funds that the dues allow it to take in, and we have a responsibility to balance that with our needs and ensure that we are able to meet the responsibilities of the union. It's not a for-profit situation. This thought that we should save tons of money. We have a finite amount, and we need to put that back into our membership, be it education, holding conferences, having conventions. All of those things matter because they make us better. We're not the little sisters of the poor. I don't know why he screams such a message of weakness, so that we don't have anything. And as it relates to ATX, which Nick can speak to even better, we did run about $1 million surplus before we entered into ATX. And while that endeavor, I believe, is fruitful, it was something that he brags about being a brainchild of his, which is also not true. Other people had thought of that well in advance of him, but the previous administration realized that the funds did not quite exist for that. He wedged it in with some funds that we had due to the COVID years. I'll let Nick speak to the rest of it, but I'll just end by saying this is we're not at all poor, sir. We can do the things that we need to do. We just have to be fiscally responsible and prudent in how we spend.
I'm going to start out with a shout out to my running mate. You want to talk about somebody who will scrutinize every penny, dime, and dollar spent? Your man Daniels-Haltom. I've been on a steady diet of Chick-fil-A and usually can only take in so much in any particular day, because we watch our funds. And just kidding about the Chick-fil-A, but like, we've had so many people go out and help donate to this campaign, right? We've traveled to 130 facilities on donations alone. We're not staying in some Ritz-Carlton when we go out, and we don't roll around in some Cadillac when we rent a car. You do what makes sense for the times and the purpose of what you have, to exactly what Jamal's point just said. But in the referencing directly to AT, and all that to be said, I trust Jamal with every dollar that this union takes in, and it being placed in the right direction of where we need to go collectively, not just spend individually to try to improve one or two things. It's how do we improve it for the betterment of all of our membership. ATX specifically, I was on the very first planning committee. It was actually tasked with helping lead that committee in that concept. We were able to do it, and one of the ideas behind it was using our surplus that we built up over the COVID years. We have more in surplus than we had before. It was going to come out of those budgets for a finite amount of time of 1 or 2, maybe 3 events, and then get right back to the business of the union. And it was to catch up in the realm of education that we missed out, and the connectivity, camaraderie, and togetherness that somehow is failed to be spoke about by Rich or Mick. But those events provide that opportunity as well. And really then pivoting into what do we need next, and then allowing that budget to look from there. So right now, our budget for ATX 2024, we're sitting currently $100,000 under budget with the ideas and concepts that we've come up with. It's about being, smart and truly looking at what does your union need, not how do we just get more, bigger, and better. So I see ATX as a idea for right now that will continue to evolve in the overall concept of how do we best educate our members and give opportunities to learn about the vast, all the different facets of our union, instead of go attend one class for 3 days in Las Vegas, and then hopefully you could come back for more later. So, and that can also be done virtually. We need to expand our ideas there in rolling out briefings and ideas and information to our membership to encourage other forms of learning that aren't just travel to a location and spend, however much money to run an event.
Okay, got another question in the chat from Kelsey McKendrick. Do you have strategies to get the more uninformed members to vote, and to also dispel some of the rumors that the other candidates have put out? Most of those members are not joining in on a Zoom call. And how can we help as boots on the ground? Well,
you almost answered exactly where it begins, is we need all of you. This union, this isn't a Nick and Jamal message, because this won't be a Nick and Jamal union. This will be an all of us union. We will forever battle misinformation. It's up to us to make sure the correct information is out there, that we're willing to speak it and live by it, and that we have these honest, open discussions just like this, so you can now help us go carry that message. I don't have to sell everybody like this is a car dealership on our union. What we have to do is make sure that we have enough information to have an informed discussion. That's what this is about. That's what these forums are about, is now that you have the rhetoric calmed down, how can you go and spread that? Or let's sign up. I'm sorry, not sign up, but let's contact each other, and we'll talk one-on-one with that person. We'll talk with an entire facility, as Jamal just said. Let's get on a Zoom. Encouraging people to go to our social media and look on there. Everything that we're saying, we've likely talked about before on our social media presence, when we continue to evolve and build based on your amazing feedback. Our website, teamndjh.com, and then just continuing to go out and engage the members at the facilities themselves. Because we could put out 1 million videos, but being able to stand at somebody, look and see, understand their sincerity. Did they really answer your question? Did they just give you a word salad? Or do you feel any level of connection or want to be a part of the movement that they are in? I can tell you, every facility that Jamal and I walk in, I don't care what coast you're on, when we leave, everybody says, okay, I understand why these two guys are running. I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, I would only add is don't be afraid. Don't pass the responsibility off to the next person. Have the conversations. I hear a lot of times people say, well, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. It's okay. Tell people who to vote for. If you know us personally, and for me personally, you know, I've grown a lot over the time. I grew up in this region. You know, if you saw me 10 years ago, I'm not the Jamal of 10 years ago. Some qualities I've improved, most certainly. But nothing's ever changed about my passion for the union. Be willing to be honest about that. But make sure people know that one snapshot doesn't formulate the life of a person. Like I said, hold us up to the light, scrutinize the work, but make sure that it's done for all candidates. And don't be afraid to be bold and protect your union. It's your union. This union's been so great to so many of us. Don't look back later and say, I should have just did a little bit more. We're all in it together. And once we're elected, it's not going to change. We know how we got there. We know what the membership wants and needs, and we'll continuously be out amongst the membership so that message never loses or gets lost on us.
Excellent. So I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat, and I don't see anybody else's hand being raised. Kelsey, as a follow-up to what Nick and Jamal just said, Miguel, I'll get to you in a second. Travis and Brittany did post the socials and the volunteer jot form. Click on the link, fill it out, and a member of the team will get that. Miguel, I'm going to unmute you right now.
I got another questions for you guys. So I am on the 2025 San Francisco Convention Committee. Hope everybody can make it up to San Francisco for convention. It's going to be great. It is a lot of work, and after watching one of Mick's videos where he was saying it would cost more 3-day versus 2-day, that is actually incorrect. He did not do his math correctly. Florida was our most expensive convention we've ever had in Fort Lauderdale. San Francisco probably will be pretty similar, if not cheaper. If inflation wasn't so bad, it would be way cheaper than the Fort Lauderdale convention. There's been a lot of talk versus a 2-day versus 3-day convention that we don't need solidarity or any of those type of things, and we should just be kind of locked up in a convention hall for 12 hours in a day and just get the business done and to move on. What is your guys' opinion? Whether convention should be 2 days or 3 days, and how important is convention to this union?
Oh, bro, thanks. Great question. I mean, you said a lot, which cleans up a lot of misinformation, so we don't have to do that. The family aspect of this past convention was so strong and so meaningful. I believe I read a comment on Facebook from a family member. I think it was a wife that said, had I not gone to that convention, I wouldn't understand why my husband was giving so much of his time to this union. And now I know, and I'm willing to give some of my time as well. This convention allows us to be part of the larger labor movement in America. We need all of our membership dialed in, engaged, and understanding, and that includes the families. Families are affected when things happen like impositions of schedule changes. You know, we have people that set their whole life around the air traffic controllers' families, the air traffic controller schedule, only to be found out that that might change and upset the apple cart. That might increase your childcare expenses by thousands of dollars, right? Those things, our family members need to see what we do and why it's so important to us. And it becomes important to them and grows the labor movement. So, you know, the convention business is important, and almost equally important to that convention building is building that esprit de corps and that solidarity of NAC.
You know, when you talk about 2 days to 3 days, if Jamal and I are elected, our goal will 100% be to stay at 3 days. It's not only a tradition of this union, it's an opportunity. And that opportunity right now, under Rich, has been squandered in the lack of actually getting up and educating our members. We could have known about these executive orders. We could have been talking about the controller staffing and ways that we're going to tackle it. We could have been talking about the labor movement. We could have been talking about our rights. We could be actually out there educating our members all the way back to what Johnny had spoke about earlier. That is our opportunity to stand up with every leader in this union. And we're talking about only a few, the proposals of very important proposals of seniority or, policy that has to be done. But also in the meantime, we could be educating on everything else that we've been talking about all night tonight. What a lost opportunity for our union, and on top of everything else Jamal just added. So we see absolute value in bringing that in, because the more information that we put in your hands. I remember when Paul Rinaldi handed me a thumb drive, and I said, where can I get some of this information or these videos that you're showing? He said, here's everything I got on this thumb drive. Any video I have, you could have it. And I used that to build an entire class at Fort Worth Center, originally called NACA First Class, that we went on and put on in the region and tried to, kind of build out from there. But it was because a leader was willing to take the time to educate me. That's where you all will take this union forward. It won't be because Nick and Jamal stood up there and talked at the convention or we passed business. It's because the leaders of this union will have a platform and an opportunity to truly speak the life of the words of contract rights and who we are and what we're about to the membership that's out there, so they can carry it forward and build on those ideas. That's what the opportunity that can't be missed.
Joel, you're unmuted if you wanted to follow up with that.
Yeah, appreciate it. So when it comes to the topic of the convention, I just want to bring up a couple points. First of all, in the Hawaii Convention in 2010, Denver in 2012, and in Minnesota in 2014, the NEB at that time made a proposal to move the convention from every 2 years to every 3 years. The convention body overwhelmingly shot that down and made their voice heard that they did not want the conventions to change in any circumstance 3 conventions in a row. So here we are now. For those on this call that might think it's a good idea to change the convention from 2 to 3 days, irrespective of the arguments for or against, the manner in which you do that is on the convention floor. For those of you in the convention, they pitch the next convention site at the convention, and then you vote on it. With that pitch comes convention dates. Once you vote in for that convention, like for the San Francisco convention, it's May 9th through 11th, 2025. We have a contract signed for 3 days. To move that convention from 3 days to 2 days means we flush hotel room rates down the toilet, because we have an obligation once you sign a contract to meet a room minimum and to meet a food and beverage minimum. And by consolidating it from 3 days to 2 days, that now requires the hotel staff to work overtime, which now you're paying them double. They don't go from time to go to time and a half, they go to double, along with the staff that runs the convention platforms for the audio and visual that occurs when we do convention. So the costs increase going from 2 to 3 days when you do it the manner in which they're suggesting. If you want it to be 2 days, you got to do it on the convention floor, and you got to make sure when we sign the contracts reflect 2 days, so we're not flushing money down the toilet by flushing rooms down the toilet, food and beverage minutes down the toilet, and paying overtime to staff. It is not a cost savings. In fact, it makes us throw money down the toilet. So please don't be manipulated by those lies either, because it's not true. That is not how that works.
Yeah, the common theme is you need less time together. You can't spend any money. Only believe them. They wanted to do something that they didn't. They want to open a contract that they extended. We don't. I guess it should be clear to you. There's a lot of manipulation and misleading. We're not doing that. We've been on this for 2 hours. We'll stay on for 5. We like engaging with the members. It really doesn't matter to us where it is. If it's at a bar, if it's at a hotel room where we're hanging out all together, if it's on the convention floor, if it's at NACA National, if it's at your facility, we want to be around the membership. That's not something that happens for free, but it's something that builds labor. It's something that builds an engagement in this union. They're telling you the old phrase, I and I alone can do this for you. But they haven't. They haven't done anything. They've had the opportunity. All they've done is lead us into a point where people are losing trust in a union that's provided nothing but greatness up until 2021.
Awesome. So I do have another question from chat. It was a private message that was sent because they're driving, so they did voice to text. It says it's a sensitive topic, but at what point do we slow down pulling controllers off the floor for NACA details? We get emails about staffing shortages from leadership, yet the same email is asking for more detail opportunities for controllers to leave the floor. What's your opinion on keeping a balance on staffing facilities fully than pulling bodies?
Yeah, we have to be extremely strategic in who we take off of what floor. And those things are considered when we make the choices for who can represent. And sometimes to the detriment of the union, because we might not be getting the best and brightest person. The agency takes off the floor whomever they need to do the projects of the agency. So if we're not taking our best and brightest off the floor, we're not going to get products that serve our membership well. We watched during the White Book from 2006 to 2009, the agency tried to implement products on their own to try to start programs such as ERAM, and they couldn't get them off the floor. This goes back to us having an overall general staffing problem. The agency would like nothing more than for us to impose a retraction on ourselves and say, we can do nothing other than air traffic control. So I don't want to be dismissive. We have to be mindful of the impacts. We can do a lot fewer full-time reps and use reps in a capacity where they can address an issue and still split their time between the floor. But we cannot retract. We can't become smaller and less influential, because that's not how NACA's interests are served. That would be very short-sighted and ultimately would have a negative impact on us. But whomever asked the question, I want to be very sensitive to. I know where it comes from. Whenever we're spared, I'm out of Las Vegas Tower. I know that does have an impact on my facility, but I try my best to make sure that that impact is repaid by being there and training, and that's what the rest of the 114s and SMEs do as well.
Sorry, that came from Matt Para, just so you know.
Thanks, Matt.
Oh man, Matt, it's so good to be with the Western Pacific, man. I love everybody that have been out there that we've run into, and you were all helping further this conversation by expanding everyone's knowledge. One of the things inside that I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk about is, where does that actually come from? One of the things you find with Jamal and I is, while on the surface that may be what it sounds like is, man, we don't want less controllers coming out of the facility. You'll hear words like, well, the agency doesn't have an appetite to change anything right now. It's incumbent upon us to put people in position or clear the obstacles out of the way as the leaders of president and executive vice president is. How about they don't count against you, and that we have our staffing levels set where over in the totality, we should be having with the new CRWG numbers that, at some point we have, will go into effect. That's what we're going to keep fighting for. But that's a number of 14,335 CPCs. Happen to be on the work group that redid all of those numbers. We're nowhere near that. We're talking in the vicinity of 10,600. We'll vacillate between that and 10,800 CPCs right now. There is the agency has a concern of, well, we're going to hire a bunch of people for positions that aren't air traffic control. Well, when we get close to that number, then let's have that discussion. Because what they don't want to do is say, we're hiring people to go do all these projects with the FAA for just the union to have more bodies in there. We need to be able to show how, through different means than just percentage-wise, that we're accounting for the persons that are actually on the operational floor doing the work every day. That's treating the actual issue instead of finding ways to, do more with less. That's what we don't want for all of you. So that'll be up to Jamal and I to absolutely do. And the other thing is, we don't want to scare anybody that's on a position, but we need to have a more robust review process when we do the solicitation. Quite often, right now, it's done by the RVP of that region, knows, has seen the list of names. We put somebody up that we think has the experience. It's up to us to go out and look into it of what's going on. But there are, unless you have a list of checking off every box when you do that solicitation, there could be something missed that we shouldn't have selected that person out of that building because of staffing or something we didn't know about. We need to, as an NEB, redo that process of when we go to select. So we should be looking at something from the FAC rep saying, these are all the things this person has done at our local. They've never attended a meeting, or they've attended every meeting and they've been present and they were elected on the executive board, or they lead our safety council, or there are, or morale rep at the facility. Those are things that are important for us to know in this selection process of 114s or any leaders of this union. And a safety and tech write-up saying these are their technical skills, and we weigh and balance all of those. So that way we know if Nicole's to be selected or Michelle is to be selected, this is what the position that we'll be in as a union, and here's the skills that they'll be bringing forward. And then doing a more regular and robust review than everybody got recommended to do it again. Let's keep going, because these aren't lifetime appointments into these positions. They shouldn't be. We should have healthy turnover, but that comes with leaders setting expectations, not saying, okay, well, eventually if there's a problem or an issue, we'll get to you later on. Let's have the conversation up front. What's going to be your impact to the union? How do we best use that while we can? And then we turn it over and transition from there, sunset that issue, or work on the next one.
All right, so we're gonna go back to the chat. We have a question from just the letter A. Letter A, if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat either your name or your facility you're from, just so we know who we're talking to. It says, Jamal said that extending the contract in 2021 was the right decision. Why do you feel that way? Why did we not negotiate with a favorable administration?
Yeah, so thank you. Listen, the reason I believe that was the right thing is because, having been part of a contract negotiation, I know that from a pay standpoint, we were looking at all time, or shouldn't say all time, because at some point there were no airplanes, but in very recent history, there was a low in our traffic. At some places we were seeing 90, 50, 30% reductions in our traffic. Up to 100 facilities were looking at downgrades. When we negotiate our pay, the agency has a fiduciary responsibility to actually set that pay based on what's being done by air traffic controllers. At that time, it was not favorable for us to do that. I didn't negotiate the term of the length of the duration of the extension, so I didn't say that necessarily should have been, but an extension at that time. And then there's another element to that, is honoring the word that this union put forward. This union was trying to, again, protect us against the potential for executive orders being placed. And at the time that you open your contract, those executive orders go into place. They were trying to protect against that wisely, and they were able to carve that out before the presidential election was complete. So they had to honor that word, because when you don't honor your word in a place as small as Washington, D.C., it is known, it follows you, and you will not be able to undo that. All that said, that was in 2021. The contract extension began in July of 2022. You had that year, you had 2023 to address it as the national president. Under the same favorable administration, never attempted to. While they thought they had your vote, it did not matter. As soon as there was an election, a contested election, they stir up all of this rhetoric, tell you that we want to extend the contract until 2029, which is completely false. Tell you that we're afraid to negotiate, which is completely false, because they're looking in a mirror that says they failed you. It wasn't us. It was not us.
All right. Miguel, I'm going to unmute you now.
Hey, back to that question with the Article 114. How do we address Article 114 NACA members being on facility books when they're full-time Article 114s and affecting the staffing? For instance, at San Francisco, we had 17 CPCs running a 24-hour facility, which is pretty close to impossible at times, with major staffing shortages. And we had 3 people on full-time Article 114 positions and not in the building. Is there a way to place those Article 114 somewhere else, or how do we get around that in the future to not affect a facility?
Yeah, Miguel, I appreciate the opportunity to expand even further talking about that just a minute ago, because probably glossed over it, where it's a very in-depth conversation. One is it's a negotiation. We have to keep that in mind. If we wave the magic wand, they wouldn't count against us. We move on. But engaging the agency and having the understanding of the total circumstances, I think that's where some of my expertise gets to lend in. I got to look over 313 facilities staffing during the CRWG process. I think there's a credible argument to be made. We want to go in and make the movements and adjustments to facility health by not just basing everything solely on a current and projected percentage rate. That projected percentage rate is actually, detrimental in many ways. It doesn't show what's happening in the facilities in the short term of 6 months to 1 year. But if we're going to go in and change that process, it's a beautiful opportunity to do exactly what you're saying in making sure that facility health is accounted for properly. And that facility health is how many controllers are currently operating at that level, and then can we put those persons in a different category that aren't, calculated for placement, or that aren't counted against you in the world of placement overall. Because that's really what we're wanting to affect, right? Is how do we have the appropriate number of controllers? Because there is nothing wrong with our facility being 99 or 103% staffed. What the agency's not going to want to do is staff the system at 103%. Well, I don't see us reaching 14,335 controllers for the next 5 to 6 years. It'll probably take in the upwards of 8 to 9 years to really start to tackle the 100% for all the facilities. So I think the time's now. It's absolutely relevant, and we just have to be smarter at how we capture it and make that argument. And if we can't make that argument, come back to you and figure out what's another way that we can account for these persons not hurting your facility and still putting you in a position to gain bodies or allow movement overall.
Yeah, another part to that, though, Miguel, to get a little bit specific, is there have been times where Article 114s have been recalled. If staffing is at a critical level at a particular facility, you do have to weigh the amount of time it's going to take that person to recertify potentially against what would be lost in a particular project. The one thing I need people to understand about the 114s is they don't let two people occupy a position at the same time. So when I became the national training rep, the only reason I even had a pass down is because Tom was retiring. So when Tom Adcock retired, he was willing to stay around and help me. Otherwise, the agency won't pay two people to do the same job. There's very little overlap. You got to hit the ground running. So when we lose that information or brain drain from that person that has become an expert in that, we lose opportunities to move the union forward. The agency in those positions often move very fast because they're just ladder climbing. And NACA ends up being the expert on both sides of the table as it relates to any project or 114. So we are very cognizant of that, but there is no prohibition on, if a crisis exists, putting people back.
Right. Do you have another one that just came in through the chat from Mark again? Do you guys have any ideas on pay band levels and how pay is calculated per facility, i.e. traffic count, complexity, and et cetera?
Yeah, I'll be really quick and then I'll pass it over to Nick. Yeah, pay bands and levels. Having the pay bands has been fruitful to us. We've used complexity indexes to allow us to get to the top. Without the bottom, there could be no top. We can't just have everybody get paid the same exact and then say that we're accounting for complexity. But those complexities have to continuously be evaluated. I'm not sure if Prescott is a Delta. I imagine it's Delta Airspace. It may be Charlie, but I know that our Deltas don't get a multiplier. They're counted at 0. Airplane in the Delta airspace is no different than an airplane in Charlie and Bravo. There are differences in the fact that Deltas don't have very many separation requirements other than SRS. I think we should invest in looking at providing some potentially that will allow us to move that Delta multiplier up. If the Delta multiplier was, say, 5 or 7, as it stands right now, it's a 0. A Tersa is a 10. Class Bravo is 25%. If Deltas were lifted up and actually accurately accounted for the very complex work, I saw, I believe it was Deer Valley Tower, no, Falcon Field. I've never seen people work that hard. Chiquete were there. He couldn't stop. He literally could not stop talking to say hello for about the first 20 to 30 minutes I was there. For him to be bound by a 0 multiplier for that is almost criminal. We need to look at that. We need to visit those things and find ways to move those, get that TCI accounted for so that those pay bands can go up. But as we stand, the 4 through 12, I think it does serve us well right now, but we do need to go forward with that.
Yeah, and restructuring, right? Probably even rebaselining where the pay bands, start, exist, stop. That's all going to be part of a negotiation. If we forever just move pay bands percentage-wise, a level 12 will forever grow and a level 4 will forever lag behind. There has to be a look at the total, we'll call it, compensation package, which will include those pay bands, which obviously ties to exactly what Jamal was just saying there in the traffic complexity indexes. But outside of that, that's the beauty of electing two people that were both certified in level 7 facilities. Like, we haven't only been in a level 12 facility before. We've worked the airspace that somebody says is less complex. Well, I can tell you, working at Addison Tower at that Delta airspace, I've been just as busy, if not busier, than I ever was at Forward Center. Is it more routine and regular? No. But does that make it where the level of compensation is appropriate now? Absolutely not. And that's why we both believe it needs to be revisited. The other things that I'll briefly touch on inside there is looking at our compensation from not only the raises that we've talked about quite often tonight, but other forms of compensation as well. We obviously want to increase our pay bands. We want to increase how we move through our pay bands. There's been even amazing ideas that have come from our members of CIC certifications, helping adjust us into pay bands of. When I get the CIC certification, instead of it just being only a 10% when I'm on position, it's actually an increase of 2.5% to my base. I already start moving through the band because I'm CIC certified. It's looking at things like Jamal said earlier, Saturday pay for our premium pays. It's looking at our training pay, not just being antiquated based on live traffic anymore. The time that we spend in the simulators, getting simulators to your facilities, first of all, but at the simulators, filling out training reports, these are all things that deserve a level of, or not deserve, that there's a level of compensation that should be associated with it because of the energy that we're putting into this. We are going to have to save the agency from themselves. That's the hard truth, because the agency has mismanaged their system. They're not appropriated appropriately. They haven't been allowed to ask for the appropriations correctly to put the controllers in the system. And now we're the ones that will weather the storm, and we'll also be the ones that save it. But it takes union leadership that's willing to go out and talk about it and then say, compensate us for us as well. Because these things are going to they're not going to be gone tomorrow. There's something that we're going to have to deal with. And in the meantime, we should absolutely not only capitalize on the economic changes, but the changes to our career field and our progression as well to help increase in all the areas and aspects when it comes to our pay in total.
Awesome. So we don't have any other questions in the chat. We're gonna have one last call here for a second. Wait. Okay, so Gary has a question, but he can't find the raise his hand function on his phone. Gary, I'm gonna unmute you. So I hope you can see that. It should pop up on your phone so you can unmute.
Okay, yeah, I got it. I put it in the chat. So I have a question. If you're elected, are you going to continue to pay Paul $20,000 a month in consulting fees?
I'll start. One thing is, again, to always be factual and informed. Paul does not get paid $20,000 a month. Paul is a consultant. I believe LM2 form will show you exactly how much he gets paid, but it's not $20,000 a month. I think as the need for him or the role that he's playing has diminished, as has the compensation. I think that our membership should know exactly what consultants do. It should be transparent. It should be understood, and it would make everyone feel a lot more comfortable with that process. When Paul was first the president, Barry Krasner was around. He had a job with NACA, and he was able to help usher us into a future that's been very fruitful for us. Rich makes the determination of who we have as consultants. He's decided that he needs Paul around. And I think he vastly underutilizes Paul, and I think it's because his ego is a little bit, well, extremely thin, to be perfectly honest. Paul should be out front. You should know what he does. We should all be benefiting from what he's capable of doing. And then I think the compensation would make a lot of sense to everyone. But to be a little more clear, every consultant would be evaluated, and based on the need for that particular one, we'd either keep them or let their contract expire. I don't want people to ever think that I want to distance myself from Paul Rinaldi. I think he's done a great job for our union and our legacy and history, but also we don't have to pay anyone just because they exist. They need to be doing something for the union. I think Paul would love to show what he's able to do for us.
Yeah, if elected president of this union, the thing shouldn't be where we're having to figure out what that consultant's doing. I'm on the national executive board. Didn't even know what Paul is compensated for. I didn't, for our first year on the national executive board, we were told by Rich, you're not even allowed to talk to Paul. You cannot go and have a discussion with him. He was to be for the president only. Like when you start getting into worlds where somebody can't even have, dialogue or discourse, you're going to have the membership go, what is really happening? What's going on? Why are we a part of this? You have to be willing to go out there and actually make the statements of what's happening. If we know this exists, why hasn't our president addressed it? Why hasn't he been willing to come forward? I can tell you today, I've never had an opportunity in the 2.5 years of being on this board to know what Paul is doing. I'm sure he's doing great work for this union. I'm sure that there is a level of compensation that should be there for it. But when Jamal and I are in these offices, one, you'll know what our consultants are. Two, you'll know what they're doing for us. And three, if they're not providing the benefits that's needed in the direction that we're going, they won't be there. We'll find consultants that are. Our union, you have to start looking back at the history, has carried anywhere from 10 consultants down to 2 before. It depends on what the times are and who is needed to help us get our voice out the loudest to benefit the collective. It shouldn't be about some mystery of, are we paying a previous president? We should be saying, okay, here is what this president, or this is what this person's company is providing our union, and then allow that conversation to grow from there. Do we see it? Does the National Executive Board benefit from it? Does the membership benefit from it? And those would be things that we're absolutely going to go in. Because right now, I couldn't tell you what any of our consultants do besides they work for our government affairs and they help our government affairs make decisions and policies, or I'm sorry, make decisions to bring forward. So.
And while we have you there, Gavin, can I ask you, and if it's okay, you just dialogue with us a little bit, because this is how we learn. Does it feel like it's some type of slush fund, or just like a lifetime achievement payment to you for Paul, or like what stirs the emotions as it relates to having Paul Rinaldi as a consultant? And I'm asking because I don't know. I really don't.
It seems like I think Nick kind of answered a lot of it. It seems like more of a lack of transparency. Here you have who has paid quite a bit of money, and now we're adding extra costs to the union, and I question whether that's enough. I question whether there isn't enough expertise in the union currently that we need to go beyond, above and beyond, and spend additional money. It just seems that way, and I think it's more of a lack of transparency with the current president, who's not addressing it. And Nick said that he can't get answers as to who he's paying and why from him. So,
hey, thank you. That's a really good answer to my question. So, and again, this is the lack of transparency leads to people doubting the goodwill and intentions of this union. I mean, no one should be paid just to exist. We do have other consultants. I believe Congressman Costello and Joel could probably help me. There's the Schuster, Congressman Schuster, both former congressmen, and we use them to do the work of our union as well as our consultants. I'm sorry, as well as our members and employees of the union. But the fact that you're feeling that is an example of what has happened. The lack of communication, the lack of transparency, and again, a willingness to shroud everything in secrecy. I can guarantee you we won't be that, brother. We won't be that at all.
What a great opportunity to have a panel on a 3-day convention, bringing our consultants on board to talk about what they do. Just an idea.
Yeah, that'd be great. I have one other question, and I thank you for doing this because I've learned more from this session than any other outreach I've seen from any other candidates in the history of this union. So I appreciate that. So I think the union's primary goal should be the health and safety of its membership. And I want to preface it by saying I in no way agree with what Whitaker did with the 10-hour rest, but it does highlight the fact that we do have a fatigue problem. And I'm feeling it. I feel like the schedule is killing me. I try to avoid mids, and I'm successful at doing it. I think that I perused the data with the research paper that was presented, and it talked about this being a carcinogen, how damaging it is to our health. And at some point, we as a society said, "Hey, secondhand smoke is dangerous to us, and just because you want to smoke next to somebody, we're going to say you can't because it's hazardous." And this schedule is liked by some people, and it's because of this perception that it's compressed and it gives you more time off. But the consequences are destruction to your health. And just because people like it, I don't feel like it should be forced upon the rest of the workforce who clearly knows that it is killing us. So I just wanted you to comment on any ideas you have to mitigate this, and any comments to what I have to say about people who do not want to be exposed to the schedule unnecessarily because certain individuals want to continue to do it.
Yeah, Gary, amazing follow-up question for where do the true issues lie? One is that while NACA was questioned during this process, we have been imposed upon to not shape the process in advance. And that's absolutely indicative of the administrator saying it would be easier for me to make up a decision than work with our union in coming up with how do we truly address these problems? Because you're right, we are fatigued. We're fatigued for a million different reasons. Up sectors and working staffed for going on a decade now. We don't have an assist where we used to have an assist. In an en-route environment, we don't have a handoff to look over our shoulder, and we just keep putting the burden on ourselves. You haven't probably seen very many times for pick at least a year where you had 100% staffing of your facility, where all of the factors that didn't used to exist helped us overcome some of the things that you're talking about on this Rattler type of schedule where you start evenings and work to days or a mid. Like all these other factors weren't weighing upon us. And then when you add them to it, that is absolutely going to exacerbate the problem. So it's not a matter of just fixing a schedule. It's actually looking at all of the issues that are taking away from us and why our union isn't being called upon to help move those obstacles out of our way. Sure, a schedule will always help, but then we need to be looking at things beyond just scheduling practices. And when we talk about staffing, about the use of overtime, why are we not talking about long-term fatigue when you work 4 weekends out of a month, and you worked on every one of the RDOs you could, whether you're on 4 10s or you're on a 5, you've maximized out your overtime. I don't think that there should be a period where we go through 1 to 2 weekends that we don't have a policy from the agency that says, now you can't work overtime or you shouldn't work overtime. What does that look like for us? How do we shape that as well? Because it's not just short-term fatigue, it's long-term fatigue that you mentioned that's wearing our people out. And the last part that I'll add to it is it parlays also into the very important topic of mental health. It's not just, it will forever be levels of health that we have to talk about, our bodies, our schedules, our minds, but also the overall well-being of our air traffic controllers. And that's something that Jamal and I want to truly jump out there and tackle. Leaders have to have discussions when it comes to our mental health and talk about not just being reactive to issues that are going on. We have controllers on the brink of breaking now all the time and that are too scared to mention it because either they're going to lose their career or lose their medical. Instead of us going out and let's make the first step in proposing an article that says it's optional, 1 hour of pay period. The agency will pay you to go to EAP counseling and make sure that if you schedule it in advance, that you have the opportunity to unweight some of these emotions, not just your schedule fatiguing you, but life fatiguing you and everything that goes along with it. All these things in combination have to be a new level and a new direction that's willing to be discussed, set forward, and a plan put in place to ultimately counter all the things that our controllers face daily.
The only thing I would add, Gary, is that wherever the science leads, if we're part of the process, we have to follow legitimate science as it stands. There were, in perusing it myself, there's EGs and kind of gut feelings, it appears. When you put science to something, it needs to be peer reviewed, it needs to be challenged. And if the science says we need more time between our shifts, and that results in schedule changes, if that results in straight days and straight eves, we got to be willing to follow that. So to answer your question, if it's unpopular but it's appropriate and it's the right thing to do, that's what leaders have to lean into. But that takes an education phase, that takes an adjustment phase. It can't be done as a result of an imposition because people's real lives are affected by that immediately, and then you lose, their faith in the union. So by no means are we saying the Rattler that we own is the only schedule that can exist. We'll go with what the science says when we're included properly.
Thank you.
All right. Not seeing any more questions in the chat. I'm not seeing any more hands raised. I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. You guys have been absolute troopers. We've been at this for over a couple of hours now. So Nick, Jamal, I want to give it back to you guys just to close it out, and we'll call it.
Listen, we'll be brief because obviously these are such important conversations, so many different areas to cover, but this should not be a one-time event. And that is why we're running. We're running because this should be the norm for our union, to be able to sit down, have these important discussions from leaders and hearing your ideas and sharing them together, that we're all moved towards the same goal. Gary may have one idea, I may have another, and Jamal has something different. But can we take the time to take that collective knowledge in and ultimately have leaders that stand up and say, this is why we went in this direction. We did it for the right reasons at the right time. And this is the direction that we're going to go now as a union. But that only happens by you all being willing to be here, have this important discussion. And we can't say, hey, thank you enough. Don't get caught up in the rhetoric of this union being torn apart because of an election. Don't let anonymous forums, anonymous websites somehow try to pigeonhole us against each other. If Rich and Mick want to do that, then that's clear the kind of union that they want as well. Somebody that's going to be willing to divide us instead of unite us through education, through these moments of camaraderie and opportunity. That's who we're going to be about. We're going to be about honesty, integrity, being in front of you. And we're not here to say we have every perfect idea. We're here to say we want to help this union stand up for itself, ensure our voice is heard, and that comes from listening to each and every one of you. So thank you for that time. Thank you for that opportunity. I'll give it over to my brother Jamal, but do not forget to get out and cast that ballot and make your voice heard in this election when it comes time. So Jamal, all you, brother.
Hey, thanks, Western Pacific. We'll see you guys around.
Thank y'all.
Thank you guys so much. Miguel, I'm going to unmute you on the way out.
When do we vote? When do the ballots come out?
June 3rd, the ballots go out. They're counted on July 30th. So coming from the Western Pacific, I would say turn in your ballot no later than July 10th. We'll self-impose that date because it's got to go through DC mail. So get your ballot in by July 10th. We'll make sure that if you're interested in helping get out the vote in your facility, fill out that link, contact Joel, contact me, contact Nicole, any of us. We want you to help get the people in your facilities to vote as well. So thanks, Miguel, for that shout out. Have a great night, Western Pacific. Y'all are amazing.